So we're looking in the Sugi of Dalid Kosos in the Amudei Hod on page Yud Gimel, Shitas Rabenu Dovid, and then we'll get back to Shitas Rashi. Umikol makom zachinu leida min Yerushalmi pirush shesan b'vas achas shehu kepirush Rabenu Shmuel Zal shalosh shesan al seder mishnasenu. The Rabenu Dovid, a Talmud of the Ramban, found the Yerushalmi that seems to explicitly support the interpretation of the Rashbam in Sheson B'Vasachas, namely that he did not drink the 4 Kosos al Seder HaBrachos. El Shemasha Omru Yidei Yayin Yotza. But now Rabenu Dovid says, wait a second. How could Rav say, in the case of Sheson Vasachas, Yidei Yayin Yotza, Eino Kemoshe Pirish Rabenu Shmuel? You see, the Rashbam has a problem over here, because how could Rav say Yidei Yayin Yotza when he's missing the most fundamental part of the mitzvah of Daled Kosos, namely to drink the 4 Kosos al Seder? So what's Yidei Yayin Yotza? And that compels the Rashbam to introduce a concept from left field, so to speak, that's not mentioned at all in the Gemara, She Yotza Yidei Simchas Yontif. So I don't believe, says Rabenu Dovid, that when it says Yidei Yayin Yotza in the case of Sheson Vasachas, that it means Yidei Simchas Yontif Yotza. Al Perusho, but rather, what does it mean? She Yotza Yidei Mitzvah Shtias Yayin Shal Arba Kosos, El Shalo Yotza Yidei HaSeder Shesidru Bahem Chacham. So Rabenu Dovid differentiates between Shtias Yayin of Arba Kosos and Shtias Yayin of Arba Kosos ala Seder. And he wants to split between those two elements. And when it says Yidei Yayin Yotza in the case of Sheson Vasachas, it means Yidei Mitzvah Shtias Yayin Shel Arba Kosos. He did actually pour 4 Kosos. He drank 4 Kosos of Yayin. However, the mitzvah of Arba Kosos requires Al HaSeder, and that he didn't fulfill. Vehu ha'emes, and this is the correct pshat. Vehu k'mosha amarnu b'sheson chai. We go back to the case of Rava, where he drank undiluted, concentrated wine. Sheyotzi yidei yayin, v'lo yotzi yidei cherus. And what does that mean? Yidei Yayin Yotza, Pirusho Sheyotzi de Mitzvah Shtias Arba Kosos. So both in our case of Sheson Vasachas and in the previous case of Chai, he drank 4 Kosos of Yayin, and he fulfilled the mitzvah of 4 Kosos Shel Yayin. There's only one major difference, that in the case of Chai, he forfeits the kiyum of Derech Cherus, and in the case of Vasachas, he forfeits the kiyum of Shtias Yain al Seder HaBrachos. V'aloshen Yidei Daled Kosos Lo Yotza, and when Rav says in the case of Sheson Vasachas that Yidei Daled Kosos Lo Yotza, Hu al Zos HaKavona Shamarnu, and that, what does it mean? What do you mean Lo Yotza? We just finished saying that Yidei Yayin Yotza. So he did fulfill the mitzvah of drinking 4 Kosos in the case of Sheson Vasachas, even as he fulfilled it in the case of Chai. So what does it mean Yidei Arba Kosos Lo Yotza? And the answer is, just like in the case of Yidei Cheres Lo Yotza, means he didn't fulfill the mitzvah of Dalid Kosos. Bishlemus, because he forfeits the element of cherus by drinking chai, so too in the case of Sheson Vasachas, where he didn't drink the brachos after reciting the four. He didn't drink the kosos after reciting the 4 brachos. He forfeits that kiyum of Dalid Kosos al Seder Habrachos. And that means lo mashlo asa mitzvah kilchasa b'shtiyas hakosos. Amuvazeh sheyotzi dei mitzvah kilchasa b'shtiyas hayayin shel hakosos el shel yotzi dei haseder shesidru lo chachamim kmo sha'amim. So just like in the case of Chai, he did not fulfill the mitzvah kilchasa because he forfeited that extra dimension of cherus. So too, if he drinks bevasachas, then he did not fulfill the mitzvah of shtiyas yayin bishlemus because he's lacking the mitzvah of seder, of reciting the 4 brachos of the seder on 4, respectively on 4 cups of wine. Now, at this point, the Amudei Hod gives an accolade and he claps out of excitement in favor of Rabenu Dovid. Why? Because now the words Yotza and Lo Yotza have to do with Shleimus HaMitzvah, both in the case of Chai and in the case of Shesam Vasachas. We now have established a certain mirror image, a parallel in which the dinim of Chai and of Vasachas correspond one to the other. The Bein B'Shson Chai, Bein B'Shson Vasachas, Yotzi Dechovis Daled Kosos. In both cases, when it says Yidei Yayin Yotz, it means he drank 4 cups of wine and that he fulfilled. But Lo Yotzi Yidei Chovasa Min HaMuvchar, he didn't fulfill the perfect Shleimus HaMitzvah. And again, in each case, for a different reason. In the case of Chai, he forfeits the extra kiyum of Cherus. In the case of Vasachas, he forfeits the extra kiyum of Shtia al Seder HaBrachos. So we now understand Yidei Yayin Yotza, which means he fulfills his mitzvah of drinking 4 cups of wine. We understand Lo Yotza means that Lo Yotza mitzvaso ke min hamuvchar. Hadayin dachuk. One thing I have to admit that's difficult here is why in the case of Shesam Vasachas he says Yidei Daled Kosos Lo Yotza. According to Rabenu Dovid, he was in fulfillment of Shtiyas Daled Kosos, but he didn't do it the best way. Havi Leila Meimar, Yidei Daled Kosos Ala Seder Lo Yotza. Also, why didn't Rav mention the 2 words Ala Seder, the Chosim and Asefer, the 2 words that were left out here that are critical words, namely Ala Seder? And a simple reading of the Gemara, Yidei Arba Kosel Yotza, means he forfeited the entire mitzvah of Daled Kosos. He's not happy also with the language of Yayin. Now we get to Rashi. So we're going to look now on page Yud Dalet. Rashi says, Shesam Vasachas, he poured 4 cups of wine into 1 large kos. The Rashbam rejects this pshat because then he only drank 1 kos. So how can you say Yidei Yayin Yotza? Rashi, on the other hand, didn't understand and appreciate the Rashbam's pshat in Sheson B'Vasachas, namely Shalol HaSeder. It should have said Sheson Shalol HaSeder, which is exactly how we objected to Rabenu Dovid. Now Rashi's objecting to the Rashbam. So what's Vasachas? Vasachas means he drank together. What does it mean he drank together? Shalom HaSeder? I mean, then he had 4 different shtiyos with hefsekos in between, and it doesn't say Shalom HaSeder. So Rashi says Vasachas means that kosachas, that he drank all 4 from 1 kos. Either Rashbam would object and say that he only drank 1 kos. Says the Amudei Hod, Nira Levayer, Beshitas Rashi, the Yesod din dalid kosos hu takana shel shtias ribui yayin. The essence, the critical mass that we call mitzvahs dalid kosos is ribui yayin. Now, are we going to measure wine by volume? No, we're going to measure it by ribui kosos. Right? Each kos will have to have a minimum shear of volume of wine, but he has to drink 4 such kosos to achieve ribui yayin. Now, I'm not sure, is this ribui yayin because of Simchas Yontiv? Rashi doesn't mention anything about Simchas Yontiv. So ribui yayin apparently is the takana of derech cherus, of something unique to the night of the Seder, that we need dalid kosos and ribui yayin. But we're not going to measure ribui yayin by pure volume. He drank, out of a barrel of wine, and he drank so much wine. But rather ribui yayin of dalid kosos. Oh. Now we have a problem. Because when he pours all 4 kosos into one large kos, I have to admit he has ribui yayin, but he doesn't have ribui yayin of dalid kosos because he's only drinking 1 kos. So again, the Rashbam is going to object against Rashi. How can you call this Yedei Yayin Yotza when he only drank from 1 kos? But the sheet of Rashi is to shift the emphasis from the kosos to ribui yayin. So even though the Rashbam might be logical in his conclusion that he only drank from 1 kos, but nevertheless ribui yayin he did achieve. And not only that, he achieved the ribui yayin of dalid kosos, because what did he do first? He poured dalid kosos. Achim mozag min achavis shir dalid kosos l'kosachas lo yotzi deichov vasam. If, on the other hand, he never had 4 kosos for ribui yayin, he just had ribui yayin without 4 kosos, he took a massive amount of wine into a large glass straight from the chavis, from the barrel, lo yotzi deichov vasam. The takonis ribui yayin oisa sheyu dalid hakosos. In order to achieve ribui yayin, he's got to drink 4 kosos. So did he drink 4 kosos or did he not? Well, if he took that ribui yayin straight from a chavis without dalid kosos, then that's not called ribui yayin. But if there were 4 kosos from the get-go, then he already has the ribui yayin. Now, even though he drinks all these 4 kosos from 1 kos, we could still consider it ribui yayin of dalid kosos, because we started at square one with dalid kosos. And now we look at Yud Beis on the left column. V'nira de lefi zeh pirish Rashi as kol asugya. The Sfira leila Rashi the Yesod chiyuva de dalid kosos hu takonis chacham lishtos ribui yayin v'leil aseder v'shira ribui dalid kosos. Ach lemitzvah min amuvcha tiknu od sheyishte kol achas midalid hakosos b'kos b'fnei atzma. Notice he's not introducing the concept of Seder HaBrachos or Seder HaGodah. Instead, he's saying that the takana was that if all things are ideal and perfect, he would drink each one of the dalid kosos from a different kos. V'lo es kula mikos echad, rather than drinking all 4 cups of wine from 1 cup. B'chein. Now, that's as far as Rav is concerned of son b'vas achas, where he poured the 4 kosos into one large kos. What about chai? Going back to Rava. V'chein k'sheyishtes hayayin kshu mazug. In order to fulfill the mitzvah of Daled Kosos kihilchasa, you need mazug. Ushnei dvarim elu biyachad havi kiyum din nosaf dilechatchila b'mitzvahs Daled Kosos. So we have 2 conditions lechatchila for Daled Kosos. Number 1, it's got to be mazug and not chai. Number 2, he's got to have 4 different cups of wine. Shabazeh yeshna hora leheja lekach shedaled kosem keneged daled l'shona shalgula. Why is it so critical that the ribu yayin be drunk from 4 kosos? Because we don't care about the fact that an hour ago or yesterday he had 4 kosos. We want to know what he's drinking, and he's only drinking from 1 kos. So although he can achieve ribu yayin based on the fact that there were 4 kosos that were poured into 1 large kos, but he's forfeiting the mitzvah of dalid kosos. He has the basic mitzvah of shtias ribu yayin, but what he's missing is the mitzvah of drinking from 4 different cups of water, 4 different cups. What is this extra embellishment of the mitzvah by drinking from 4 different cups? He already has ribu kosos, ribu yain from 4 kosos. The answer is that the shtia from 4 separate kosos is linked up and reminds us of the Lashonos of Geula. Now let's take a look on page Tes Vav, and then we go back to the Otzer Hayunim, Emir Hashem. Lefi zeh, misparshim divrei Rava, the Kamash son Chayi Yidei Yayin Yotzi Decherus Lo Yotzi, the Kamash Advarim, the Yidei Yayin Yotzi Pirusho Shekiyam Es Ikar Din Daled Kosu Ribu Yayin B'Shir Daled Kosos, the Yidei Cherus Lo Yotza. Pirusho Shelo Kiyem Es HaMitzvah Min HaMuvchar. Shehi hora b'maisa shel cherus. So again, he needs to demonstrate cherus, and if the wine is concentrated and not diluted, he doesn't demonstrate cherus, and therefore he doesn't fulfill the mitzvah b'shleimus min hamuvcha. Now we get to son vasachas. Oh, he says Rava. I don't know. We have Rav. If somebody has the time, just look up the Gemara and see if there's any girsa there that has Rava. Yidei yayin yotza, yidei daled kosos lo yotza, misparish hadover, the yidei yayin yotza, hainu ikar chiyuva de daled kosos yotza, shrei sof sof shasa shir shal daled kosos, so he has the ribu yayin, the yidei daled kosos lo yotza, hainu shlo kiyemes hamitzvah min hamuvchar, Shehula horos leheja al dalid kosos chaluka zemizek keneged dal l'shona shel geul. Ubishson vasachas chiser horozu. Uledivrei Rashi osi shaper divrei Shmuel v'Rava hipshuton mamish dimash homer Shmuel dishson chai v'shson vasachas yotza kamar yidei mitzvos dalid kosos. V'chein madika omar Rava Yidei Yayin Yotza. So again, I think when he says Rava, he means Rav, and he's referring to Sheson B'Vasachas. Mairi B'Mitzvahs Yayin, to Daled Kosos. Sharei Bozeh Mairi Shmuel, Korele Yayin Stomah V'lo Yayin to Daled Kosos. and he fulfills the mitzvah of yain. Sharikak bozem ma'iri b'mitzvah daled kosos. V'rak l'gabish son vas achas nokit loshen daled kosos. Mishum deboy l'meimar de b'mitzvah daled kosos gufa. Yeshna mitzvah namuvcha lahoros lehejish shosa midaled kosos al yidei chaluka lekosos nifradim v'lokim ze kasher son vasachas. So just to summarize, we have yidei yain yotza in both cases of chai and sheson vasachas because he did drink 4 cups of wine, and the deficit, so to speak, the part that he's missing, that he omitted in the case of Chai, is Cherus, so he didn't demonstrate Cherus and therefore Mekayim the mitzvah b'shleimus. And in the case of Sham Vasachas, what he's missing is the Dalid physical Kosos, which is Keneged Dalid Lashonos of Ge'ul. But as far as the Riba Yayin is concerned, he had originally 4 cups of wine, and all that volume of wine was poured and is collected now in one large goblet. And therefore, he has the Riba Yayin of Dalid Kosos. But he doesn't have the element of Zecher le'arba l'shonos shel ge'ula, and therefore he does not have a mitzvah b'shleimus. The gam nichal lepirish Rashi shebechol makom tekam lo yatsa hayne b'shson chai lo yatsi de cherus u'b'shson vasachas lo yatsi de Dalid Kosos misparish haloshon lo yatsa bechada machta. To lo yatsa yidei chovas Dalid Kosos min amuvcha. All right, he's missing that extra hora of derech cherus or l'shono shel ge'ul. So let's just see if we can finish up this section here on Rashi. I think that would make more sense. So this way, tomorrow we could jump right into the sheet of the Rambam and the Rif and the Brisker Rav. V'hinei l'chor yesh lahoyer. Kevan shel pirush Rashi yeshnam gimel inyanim. Hainu chovas yayin, chovas cherus, chovas dalid kosos. Lama lo ka'omer b'shson chai yidei yayin v'dalid kosos yotza. Yidei cherus lo yotza. Let me just see if I can understand what bothers the Mechaber here. He's saying that you have 3 different elements of chiyuv. You have chovas yayin, chovas cherus, and chovas dalid kosos. So in each of the cases, whether it be chai or sheson vasachas, we should check off any of those 3 boxes, any of those 3 chiyuvim. For example, in the case of chai, we could check off 2 out of the 3 boxes, and that is yayin and dalid kosos. So he has ribu yayin, he has 4 different kosos that he drank from. He's missing only 1 element, and that is cherus. So therefore, it would have made more sense in the case of chai that he would point out yidei yayin, yotza, yidei dalid kosos, yotza, yidei cherus lo yotza. Check off all your boxes. V'chein b'shson v'vasachas. Okay, let's try to guess what he's going to say now without reading it. In terms of the boxes, so what do we have? We have yidei yayin yotza, yidei cherus yotza, but yidei dalid kosos lo yotza. Lema, he should have said yidei yayin v'cherus yotza, yidei dalid kosos lo yotza. It's interesting because in the Rashbam's favorite reference, he could have asked a similar question. It should have said Yidei Simcha Yatza or Lo Yatza. Anyway, V'nirel de lepirish Rashi daled kosos v'cherus enom shnei hidurim shekol echad mehem hu hidur b'fnei atzmo ela ditravayu b'yachad osim hidur echad. So now he's integrating the yayin with the cherus. Dal yedei travayu nikar dashtia he keneged daled kosos shel geula. So in other words, the number 4 here is because of the Lashon Shel Geula, and the need and requirement for mazug is also to indicate the Geula, the Cherus. So therefore we can both, we can combine the two into one. Ubazeh Makai mitzvah shlema shi mitzvah muvchar. Kasher chaser chadavinayu leko lahach hidur klal. V'lo miskayemes ela ikar mitzvahs dalid kosos shehi ribu yayin kishir dalid kosos. Ulefi zen nicha lama b'shason chai ka'omar rak yidei yayin yotza v'lo ka'omar di yotza af yidei dalid kosos. So we're talking about undiluted wine. And he couldn't add the Dalid Kosos here as Dalid Lashon Shel Geula because he's missing Cherus. If he's missing their Cherus because it's not Mazug, then it's not going to be reminiscent of the 4 Lashonos of Geula. The 4 Lashonos of Geula, which require 4 cups, are parallel or integrated into Cherus, into that concept of Cherus. And Dalid Kosos ein behem shum hidur im enam b'yayin mozuk. V'lo kiyam klal shum hidur nosaf milvad din yayin atzmo. V'hod lo ka'omar yidei cherus v'yidei Dalid Kosos lo yotza. So therefore he doesn't separate between the two, Cherus and Dalid Kosos, because they're all deficient in the same way in their Cherus. And here on the top of Tezayin, he says, why didn't he add Yidei Cherus? Mishum debemis lo yotzi Yidei Cherus. Doleka hidur b'fnei atzmo b'mesha shosa derech cherus el derech cherus haviprat mehaora lehedja shel dalid l'shon shel geula, and he doesn't have dalid kosos. According to Rashi, he only drank 1 kos. V'chol shesom vas achas v'lohora, he never demonstrated the dalid l'shon shel geula by drinking 1 kos. Is lekashum kiyum b'masha shosa derech cherus. So you cannot have a kiyum of derech cherus with yayin mazug if you're lacking the dalid l'shon shel geula hidur, because it's all one entity. U'mikol makom ka'omal rak diyidei dalid kosos lo yotza v'lo kamar diyidei cherus nami lo yotza. So again, he doesn't have to add that he messed up on Cherus, because once you point out that he messed up on the Dalid Shon Shel Geula with Dalid Kosos, then automatically I understand that he doesn't have a kiyum of derech Cherus. The bol afarish kakes hadorish mekalkelas hahidur, v'hu mashachiser ba'oras Dalid Kosos. Okay, so that's for today. And now we go on to the Otzer Hayunim. Now, again, you'll have to tell me, Steve is not back yet, although he's supposed to come back at the end of this week, but which pages you might be missing in Amudei Hod. Do you have, for example, page Tes Zayin? So I don't know if maybe John is a better photographer than I am. He had to run out on Tuesdays. He runs out early, but I would ask John if he's better at this than I am, then maybe he can send out those pages in the Amudei Hod from Tes Zayin and on. Do you have Tes Zayin or you don't have Tes Zayin?
We have to page 20.
Oh, you have till page 20. Oh, you calm me down. Thank you so much. Okay, great. Now, where do you have in the Otzer Hayunim? I don't know, you have the whole essay? Because we got up to page Hey in the Otzer Hayunim, which I'd like to continue today. You may remember that we discussed the concept of Pirsum Hanes with regard to Dalit Kosos, and we compared that to the Pirsum Hanes of Chanukah and the Pirsum Hanes of Kiddush, believe it or not, because the Avnei Nezer says that the greatest miracle of all was the creation of the universe, and Shabbos commemorates that miracle. But we have 3 levels, says the Avnei Nezer, of Pirsum Hanes. The first level, or shall we say the highest level of Pirsum Hanes, is that of Chanukah, because then you're going outside into the public domain and lighting your Chanukah candles. That's the greatest Pirsum Hanes. Then we have one notch lower, which we said was Arba Kosos, where he's drinking it inside his house and not outside in the Rosh Hashanah, and therefore his Pirsum Hanes is only for the Bnei Abayis. Then we get to the lowest level of Pirsum Hanes, which is Kiddush. And why is that the lowest level? Because Kiddush is something that he recites every Shabbos. So on the Leil HaSeder, the Kiddush is lacking a full-blown Pirsum Hanes. Whereas Dalit Kosos is a full-fledged Pirsum Libanov Ulibnei Beisa. V'yigadat Libincha. So the Avnei Nezer assumes that the Kiddush is only a Pirsum Hanes li'atzmo. Why? Because it's the same identical Kiddush as any other Kiddush. Whereas Dalit Kosos is a Kiddush, is a Pirsum Hanes li'bnei Beisa. And now we're up to the Ramah. So this is the last paragraph on the right column of page Hey. Misha Elo Yayin Li'arba Kosos. Okay, now in Kiddush, or shall we say at least in the kosher so bracha, we have to see about Kiddush, but there's halacha called Chamar Medina. And the question here is, can you be Yotzei Arba Kosos with Chamar Medina? Like Ruzhinka, like raisin wine. And the Ramos says in the name of the Maril that you can be Yotzei the mitzvah Dalit Kosos on Leila Pesach with Chamar Medina. And on that, the Brisker Rav comments that even though the whole year round for Koshel Bracha you could be Mevarch on Chamar Medina, however, to be Mekayim the mitzvah of Shtias Cherus, there are Cherus, Chamar Medina will not do it. Because there's something special about Yayin. Yayin is there Cherus, but another mashke is not considered Cherus. Now we go back to the Maril, as quoted by the Ramah, and he says you could be Yotzei with Chamar Medina. It must be that the Maril, like the Tosa at the beginning of our Pesachim, holds that the mitzvah of Daled Kosos is Koshel Bracha, so that the fulfillment of Daled Kosos is equal to the fulfillment of 4 Kosos Bracha. And with regard to Koshel Bracha, we have halacha of Chamar Medina. So even though, I'm just wondering whether or not Yidei Cheres Yotza in such a case. You remember we said that in Yayin Chai, he's not Yotzei Derech Cheres. I would say with the Kal V'chomer, in the case of raisin wine, for sure he's not Yotzei Derech Cheres, but I don't know if that's correct. He says, Achdocha agriz bir zeh, mishum shedivrei haRamah heim rak v'misha ein lo yayin. The Ramah is only saying in a Shasat Chak, you don't have access to wine, then you could rely on Chamar Medina. But it's possible that Chamar Medina would not be a kiyum of Derech Cheres. There it is. It's just like Yayin Chai. When we call Makom, all of Levarach al Chamar Medina, Kidei Lotzeis Es Hadin Shel Koshel Bracha. And this is where the Rav mentioned that during the war, as we saw the Nefesh HaRav, they couldn't get Yayin. No, it wasn't during the war necessarily, but anyway, because of the poverty, they couldn't get Yayin. And they could only get enough Yayin for Dalid Kosos. And the question was whether they have to get Yayin for the rest of the people. They couldn't get Yayin for the rest of the people. So should we at least supply the rest of the people with Rajinka wine? And they decided no, because the only reason for Chamar Medina is to obtain the kiyum of Daled Koshel Bracha, and that they could be Makayim vicariously by listening to the Makadish. So again, if nobody has Yayin, then we're going to make sure that at least the Makadish will have Chamar Medina. But even if they have Yayin for the Makadish, we will not require that every other member of the household have in front of him Chamar Medina, because he doesn't gain anything by that. The Chamar Medina introduces the element of Bracha al Kos, which is Yotzei from the Makadish. And as far as the mitzvah of Shtiyas Yayin Derech Cheres, that he cannot fulfill because they have no Yayin, all they have is raisin wine. Okay, now B'das Hagra. The Brisker Rav has a Vilna Gaon. Ha'imu Sover, this is a Safek, She'ein din nosaf b'arba kosos Yosef Yikol Koshel Bracha. V'ochiach midivrei Hagra b'mokom acher she'din arba kosos Choluk b'yisod dino midin koshel bracha. So the Brisker Rav has apparently a proof from some comment. He doesn't tell you bein time what it is in the Shulchan Aruch, in the Bir Agron Shulchan Aruch, that there is a fundamental difference between arba kosos and koshel bracha. Now he quotes the Shulchan Aruch in Siman Reish Ayin Aleph. There's a machlok between the Ritva and the Rosh. B'din shtias shir mole lugmav b'kiddush. So I don't think this has anything to do with Daled Kosos per se, this machlokus. The argument between the Ritva and the Rosh is about any Kiddush and whether or not someone at the table has to drink a full mole lugmav, or can we say shtia shtayim mitztarefes, and two people, each of whom drank half of mole lugmav, would be mitztaref. Ubibir agra beer, she is sod machlokosim who bibir divrei gemara hishka mehen lebanav ulebei so yatsa Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak v'hu de ishte ruba de kasa. And shitas Rashi shekavanas hagemara shem achar sheshasa mole lugmav hishka eshar b'nei beso yatsa achar ritva b'shem atosus beer she'im hishka lebanav b'nei beso yatsa im kulam yachad shasu shir mole lugmav. Now, this sugya is talking about Daled Kosos on Leil Pesach. Divrei Agra, Hochiach Hagriz, Shu Sover, she is so din arba kosos, eno shtias hakosos, el kechol koshel brocha, sheish listos hakos, rak machmas kvoda brocha. Umishum shagra kosav, she'im bir hagemara hu keharosh, she'arba kosos chayev odom lishtos mole lugmav v'lo moel itzaref es b'nei beso af b'kiddush hadin came. The im yisod din arba kosos hu shtias hakosos heich loman arosh mi din arba kosos l'kiddush. Okay. So basically, we have this whole discussion here about the Rosh and his analogy between Daled Kosos and Kiddush, and whether you could derive conclusions about Kiddush from Daled Kosos. Like, for example, if the Rosh says that there's no tziruf for mole lugmav, and each person would have to drink his own mole lugmav, then Kiddush would also require that, we're not going to be mitzaref different drinkings of different people. We need mole lugmav of one shosa. Now, if shtias hakosos was the essence of Daled Kosos, then you would not be able to prove anything about Kiddush from Daled Kosos. So the Gra comes to the conclusion that the din of Daled Kosos is not the din of Shtiyas HaKos, but rather Koshel Bracha. And that's why the Rosh is able to derive conclusions about Koshel Bracha based on Daled Kosos. All right, that leads us up to Ach es Dvarav. That's where we're up to. Okay, then. So in about 20 minutes or so, we'll learn Sanhedrin and Mitzvah Hashem. I'm going to move my Pekala here over to my apartment. Can you see me? I'm just curious because here it's very dark. There's a clock here that goes off. I don't know if it affects. What do you say, Reuven?
Yes, we can see you.
Oh, you don't see me in the dark.
No.
Interesting, because I feel like I'm in the dark over here. Okay, so I'm going to shut down, and then we'll go back to the link for Sanhedrin, which is the link for Daf Yomi. Okay, then?